Morning everyone, and welcome to another YouTube video. You join me in this incredible place. You probably all recognize it, but if you don't, I'm in the Lofoten archipelago in the northernmost tip of Norway. We're inside the Arctic Circle, and it's an absolute mecca for coastal photography. The mountains are dramatic, the light in winter is exceptional, and most importantly, there's an absolute abundance of incredible foreground so that you can produce some exceptional images. So in this video, I'm going to go and look for some. Essentially, we're a few minutes from dawn, so I'm hoping for some lovely alpenglow or some directional light if I'm lucky. Just spin you around, hopefully on the mountains. The pink is starting to appear there, so the first signs will be light on the top of the mountain, and then hopefully sun is rising out in that direction and I might get some lovely directional light. But the first job at hand is to go looking around for some foreground. So like I said, that's what this video is going to be about. I'm going to talk to you about what makes compelling foreground, really. You know, how do you make sure that the kind of the weight and the relative significance of what you find works with the rest of the scene. We've got a lot going on at the coast. We've got waves and incredible mountains too. Secondly, I'm gonna just talk a little bit about why you need to shoot generally in portrait orientation for these kinds of shots. Sometimes landscape works, but I'll go into some of that. I do that quite a lot. And then lastly, hopefully we get it, I'll talk about how you use the light when you know where it's going to be coming from, and in particular some directional light. So without much further ado, let's get stuck into things. So you can just see that I'm set up here with this incredible little kind of a arrowhead, it looks like, shape it seems to have frozen, but all around it you've got these wonderful frosted granite rocks, and that is what I'm building my image around. Essentially, we've got the mountains in the distance. So let me just talk a little bit about what I'm thinking about here. And this is generally the start of my process. I go looking for kind of really interesting and peculiar or standout pieces of foreground. You know, not just any old rock or any old shape, that'll do. You know, I often mention it, but I live in the Peak District back home, and you know, you struggle for foreground a little bit. There's a lot of kind of rocks jotted about and dotted about on the edges and whatnot, but a lot of them aren't really interesting, and you kind of tend to realize as you go through this photography journey that a lot of that stuff just doesn't work because it's not interesting enough in its own right. So that's job number one, and I found it here. This shape is absolutely, well, it's just a lovely shape in its own right, and it's just really interesting that it's frozen. You know, some of the other rock pools around aren't necessarily frozen, so that's kind of feature number one. And then, like I said, it's surrounded by all this lovely frosted granite this morning, which yeah, you don't always get it. It's either covered in snow or it's a bit warmer and it's just polished, or of course the rain or the waves has taken off anything that's sitting on the surface. So that's a nice touch. And then, you know, that's your first job done. You found your foreground. Then job number two really is, and this is where it starts to, you can sort of, your mind needs to be then thinking about, well, this might look lovely in its own right, but how do I bring significance to the foreground in the context of the rest of the image? And actually the way you do that is just to make sure it's actually not too overpowering. It's directionally sitting in the right place. You know, have you got anything in the midground and the distance in particular? Yeah, it's kind of easy here in Lofoten. There's just mountains everywhere you look. But does that exist in your image too? And is that foreground you found sitting structurally in the right place in the context of everything else you see around you? So we've got that here. You know, these mountains really are the feature range of the raid, and this lovely little shape is facing towards my mountains, so it lets me build a composition around it. you do need to make sure you don't forget about your midground, and that's probably the trickiest out of the three components, foreground, midground and distance, that you're going to have to contend with, really. And it is essentially because you have less wiggle room in the midground to move that midground about a bit. You're dealing with your foreground, getting closer, moving further away, and kind of spending a lot of time optimally positioning your foreground. And then of course you've got your distant, usually a hill or a ridge line or maybe the horizon or something. You'll also be kind of constrained by that. So that then leaves your midground is generally the last bit that you almost can't do very much about. You can sure move up and down, as I've done here. Let me talk to you about what my midground is first of all, and what I'm having to contend with. Now, there is a rather large rock here, and it risks being too large. If I don't get low enough, then there's probably a bit too much sea in between my feet and the mountains. It sort of cuts you off as the viewer. And if I get too low, because I'm trying to, that rock risks being a little bit too big. So, sometimes lowering yourself down makes your foreground bigger and diminishes what's in the midground. And the problem is it rises too high and it starts to cut into the horizon and the mountains, and you don't want that either. So, that's what I'm having to contend with. I think I've sorted it out pretty nicely, though. If we just have a little look back in camera while I just sort this out. So there's the image. I'm as well as focusing on this lovely little frozen shape, I'm making the most of the boundaries here, because there's quite a nice kind of triangular sort of pyramid thing going on, and then as we move into the distance I've got this triangular shape, a little bit of sea, and then obviously the triangles of the mountain in the distance, and they all kind of work quite nicely together as sort of interlocking pyramids or triangle shapes as you move through the image. So that was the last bit of fiddling about I did with my foreground, not just focusing on that lovely frozen shape, which would be so easy to do, and then of course I would have forgotten about the edges. So that's it. I'm going to wait for the pinks to start to emerge. Really hope they do. They're lovely in that direction. God, it's so directional, Lofoten, honestly, really, really is. You get just localized areas of the sky where loads is happening, and literally centimeters to the right, not very much else can be happening like we've got here, sadly. So I'm sort of facing the wrong way, but you can't legislate for everything. Anyway, so I'm going to stick around and see how this pans out. Now, the other thing I just want to draw your attention to is that it isn't just about this shape. Actually, I spotted that down in the bottom left-hand corner, there's another kind of quite nice extension of this triangular pyramid shape. And the two together kind of form the base of a pyramid that leads into the distance and points towards my rocks. So I've framed kind of quite intentionally to the left-hand side of this shape there, and that's so that I can, if I get a bit too close to it, it'll probably still work in its own right. But I just think with that extra pyramid, it looks a little bit more interesting and compelling, and you've got kind of shapes within shapes here, and that creates really, really interest. They're all very harmonious. They're all triangular and kind of angle grinder cut, if nature had such a thing. So that's my thinking. I'm going to get going because the light is starting to project up and over now. Kind of the sun's getting up on the right. That's starting to move across. The clouds above are starting to light. There's some light sneaking through in the corner. This is what I wanted. So let's watch this unfold. Oh, and the first light is hitting. I've got to go. Check that out in the distance. Got to go. Now then, the second thing that I want to talk to you about is shooting in portrait orientation. I do this a lot. I don't exclusively do it, but the main thing it gives you is the ability to create incredible depth in your image. Very simply put, because you've just got kind of more space to work with as you go from the base of your feet into the distance. It's a longer frame. It's harder to do that when you're in landscape. It's possible to do it, but you're dealing with a kind of much narrower front to back space to be able to assemble things in your image. So that's often why I am just already thinking about portrait orientation when I'm looking for kind of big foregrounds. And then when you move into that kind of shot, you're gonna want to do, especially with a wide angle lens, you're gonna want to, within reason, sometimes stretch around some of the things that you're putting into your image. So for example, here, on the face of it, this little kind of little arrowhead, is of a certain size, but I know that if I get really quite close to it, and I'm probably about a meter or so away, if I put this this triangular edge in the bottom left hand corner of my frame, let me just show you what I mean. I'm able to kind of stretch out the base of that pyramid and just kind of elongate it into I guess a much more pleasing pyramid and triangle, really. So you can do that with wide angle lenses. It's essentially, you're using the distortion that it can create at the edges of very wide focal lengths. I'm shooting here at probably 15-16 mil, maybe even 14 mil. You can use that to your advantage actually at the top of the frames too, if you don't want to include too much sky, and I don't here, because have a look, above the mountains it's just blue sky, and that's pretty boring. There's a bit of kind of projected colour in the sky, which is nice. I can push my mountain peaks to the top of the frame, and then that just gives them a little stretch at the end. You often hear kind of negatively about, wide angle lenses diminish subjects in the distance and makes them appear miniature. Well, yes, they can do, but you can counteract that to an extent, like I said, by not including too much sky and just allowing your mountain peak to get a bit closer to the edge. And it also pulls the viewer into the frame a little bit. When you've got these images with large amounts of sky at the top, you can feel a little bit lost in the landscape, but my shot here is just much more, I guess, much more atmospheric, because I'm doing my best to sort of pull you as the viewer into the frame so that, you're not getting lost in the sky above. So yeah, that is essentially it in terms of portrait orientation. I just wouldn't be able to do this if I was trying to shoot it in landscape. I don't have any interest at the edges of my scene, and a lot of these scenes that you'll see me shooting in Lofoten, they just lend themselves wonderfully to that incredible kind of depth with a phenomenal foreground pattern, an imposing mountain in the distance, and then hopefully some light, and Bob's your ankle. Right, I've got to go again because the light is just starting to come from the left hand side now, creating some really lovely colour behind my mountains. I'll see you all in a bit. So the last thing I want to talk about here, which really just kind of puts the finishing touches on your images, is of course light, but not just having light in your scene. You need to, I guess, be anticipating where the light is going to come from and what direction it's going to project into your scene. Is it going to catch you by surprise and sort of shine at you and give you a bit of a technical challenge in shooting into the sun? There are certain things you need to do to make sure that those images turn out nicely, or is it going to shine into a part of the image that perhaps doesn't complement? Maybe it'll look nice, but if it takes you to a side of the image that you don't want, that's probably not going to work. Equally, if you've got some incredible foreground, sometimes when the light shines onto it, it just lights it up. Of course, you've got to be careful of whether or not the colors are going to work with that. Maybe you need to polarize to allow the light to cut through the water, or maybe you don't want to polarize because you have a nice cloud above you and you want to reflect that. So these are all of the sort of things that you want to think about in the context of the image that I've got going on here at the minute. I'm sort of settling for I guess a second best option. What I wanted was some of this light that is managing to make its way through into the far distance there. It should, if it isn't blocked, light up the edges of these peaks that are the mainstay of my frame. It's not at the minute, but I'm settling for second best, because if you look at the kind of directionality of my image, I've got this this incredible foreground down in the bottom left. Everything seems to be kind of pointing to the left, and then you've got these incredible peaks here. But to counterbalance that in the distance, I've just got the fact that the light is only falling there and not on this side of the frame as well. It just helps me to kind of maintain a bit of visual balance between the impressive peaks on the left, but then you've got that light on the right, so it kind of again holds the viewer in the frame as they move through it. So that's kind of working in my favor, really. Perhaps if the light was about to break on those peaks, the top right of my frame might just look a little bit empty, especially if there's a bit of blue sky above it. So yeah, I'm working with the direction of the light that I'm getting and just thinking about whether or not my composition works. And that's what you need to do. It's not just about light having light in your image. It needs to work in terms of the direction it is hitting whatever it is in your image, and whether or not you want that direction of the light, whether you want the light there in that part of the image. So yeah, that's it, directionality of light. Tell you what though, I found another kind of just shot impromptu, and it's just worked an absolute treat, because you've got all of these rock pools down at the base of my feet, and a lot of them have already got kind of this goldy, there's some sort of gold tones in the rock, and underneath it there are bits of red too. But when you get a cloud above you that's kind of picking up that yellow light as well, it was just kind of projecting down some, even more yellow, and it just turned the whole shape at my feet just golden yellow set against the black. It looked wonderful, and I've got all of that blue in the distance. I'll pop it up on pop up some of the behind the scenes footage on screen now for you to see. And just for a brief while, it was absolutely sensational. Of course, the other thing, and I didn't really talk about this because it's more about coastal photography, but in terms of the directionality of light I was talking about, well, at the coast you've also got the tide and the water levels to contend with, and sometimes you want a bit of water movement in your image, because that just enhances the direction the viewer will take through the scene. So as a result of waiting here for a little bit longer, the tide levels of the sea's rising, and it's starting to come up into this kind of nook and cranny there. So yeah, it worked really, really nicely. I had this golden light shining down onto my shape there, and then I had water running, kind of exploding into this gully. I think I caught one shot with quite a big wave coming through. Then you've got the coastline around the outskirts, and then these wonderful mountains in the distance. So I've got a feeling that's going to be a really, really good shot too. I'll when I make this video, I'll pop it up on screen if it's any good. But yeah, all in all, a fantastic morning. And actually, I think I'm going to end it there and keep this one again short and sweet. Not long been here in Lofoten, so plenty more videos to come. And I'll be doing loads of this coastal stuff, so I can imagine that if you're not into it, you might get a bit sick of it. But if it's your thing, then there's an abundance of it coming. So thanks ever so much for watching. Please do give it a little thumbs up if you've liked what I had to show you in this incredible environment. And how can you not like it here in Lofoten? It's just the stuff of dreams. Perhaps drop me a comment to let me know anything even more specifically about the video that you thought might be of importance. And more important than anything else, if you're a new watcher and you just found my channel, you haven't subscribed, then do think about pressing that little button, and then that'll notify you later down the line when I bring out another video, so you can get on and watch it if you've enjoyed this one. I'll pop up on screen some links to my social media. I generally post most of my imagery on Instagram, actually, for more of my kind of regular day-to-day stuff. I've got a website too, so that's got all the details of other stuff that I do. I'm running a workshop here later on in the month with my friend Stu, stew, and yeah, there's all sorts of bits and pieces there. So do go and check that out. But otherwise, I'll say cheerio for now, and see you again on the next one soon. Ta-da!